I'm Teresa Caraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, I want to talk about the reality puzzle and the propaganda playbook. I'm going to look at the reality of the world and in the world as a jigsaw puzzle that we need to solve by engaging the feminine and the masculine sides of the brain. And then I'm going to rephrase the question of the last episode, which was, are we being manipulated? And look at, can we be manipulated? Do the mechanisms exist? And last, I'll look at the propaganda playbook and the axioms and rules that I've been able to discern of how they get away with what they do. But first, I want to address a couple of comments from viewers. One is from Chris, who sent me a really nice note saying that my words hit home with him and that in these troubled times, it was easy to feel lonely and scared, and that finding kindred spirits really meant a lot. So I want to tell Chris that that really touched me, that he sent that. He also added that every time a YouTuber asks for subscribers, he dies a little inside. That he sees Google as making a lot of money from advertisers, of course, and that every subscriber is another soul fed to the machine. So on a personal note, I reassured Chris that it's not my intent to ever monetize my channel, even if I had the 950 more subscribers to even apply. But that's because my retirement plan is to mooch off of my daughters and to die before I run out of money. And being ancient, I already have a head start on that. But not everyone has that option. So I think every day I hear someone who is deliberating about how do I make a living that doesn't feel like my soul's being sucked out through my eyeballs. I did an episode a while ago called Is Our Love Being Pimped for Profit? And I took it down because of some production quality, but I will re-record it another time. It was on Russell Brand's interview of Jocko Willink, in which he says, is our love being used for nefarious means? So I look at a difference between the job that we do and the job that we're paid for. I think the job that we do is a beautiful thing. I see people who are making meaningful lives out of being Starbucks baristas. And at the same time, there's the job that we're paid for, which is to make money for Starbucks. There's not a good way to really separate those two, because even if you find a job that you think is saving the world, you may be working for a nonprofit and feeling really good, but in reality, you could be helping the philanthrocapitalism of Bill Gates or Rockefeller or the Carnegies. When I look at Russell Brand, for instance, the job that he does is an amazing thing of bringing meaning and truth to a lot of people who wouldn't have access to it otherwise. But the job that he's paid for is to be another hooker in the YouTube brothel. His job is selling eyeballs to advertisers. Now, he is my favorite hooker because his pillow talk is so sweetly subversive, but that's still the reality. So I think we should stop beating ourselves up for the ways in which we need to sell our bodies and just keep our souls intact. The second person, which might have been the same person, come to think of it, was someone who responded to a comment I made on Matt Taibbi's Substack. And this person asked, essentially, how do you get the nerve to do your episodes and believe that people will want to hear what you have to say? Now, he put it much more diplomatically than that, but my answer was that I couldn't control who saw it, and I couldn't control what they thought of it. What I could control is that I taught myself something new in every episode. So what I look at myself doing is taking this little piece of the puzzle and seeing if I can figure out where does that join? How does that connect to all these other things that I've been reading? And how does it fit into the big picture? So let's look at that. I am a jigsaw puzzle junkie. There are two things that I cannot have unfinished in my house if I want to get anything else done. One is a jigsaw puzzle, the other is a sci-fi novel. So my daughter Cassandra and I finished this one on Tuesday in one night, and then I just picked up this one for this week. But we have very different techniques for how we work on puzzles, which is I am pathologically analytical, as Brett Weinstein also says about himself. And so I need to get all the edge pieces collected and then all the little piles of different colors and different places and different patterns. She is more intuitive, that she looks at the big picture and she will start with one little thing that interests her and work her way out and just feel her way along for like which piece calls to her to put in there. So we work pretty well together in that way. I think that this is related to looking at the masculine and feminine sides of the brain. I am very masculine in terms of the way that I think. And so in looking at, say, this piece, and it's only coincidence that it looks like the little man, it is certain things that are going to fit with its surroundings. So you look at, how does this fit with my experience? How does this fit with history? Where does this go with other sources that I've been looking at? And so I'll look at all of that data and be able to click that in. What Cassandra looks at is more the feminine side of the brain, which is the big picture. What's the gestalt? What is all of this adding up to? Does this piece feel the same as this piece over here? And so I think those are both sides that we need to be putting things back and forth in order to figure out what's the reality. Because I think what they're telling us is that here's the box and that's what the picture is. And reality does not have a box. So I don't think the picture is the one that they're telling us it is. And that when we learn something new, it doesn't mean that we take the rest of the puzzle and throw it up in the air. It means that we analyze it and we say, does this fit with what we already know? And that's the approach that I think we need to be taking to adding to our sources of knowledge. You may have noticed this poster behind me in other videos. It's put out by the Beehive Collective out of Maine, and they are an anti-copyright, anti-ownership group where they put together these drawings like a jigsaw puzzle, where they have different transparencies that show where one fits into another. The real size of these are murals. They're wall size, and they go and tour around and talk about what's been happening in this area. And this is the last one in a triptych. So this is from Colombia to Mexico. So they have very clever ways that they represent all the different things that are threatening the way of life. They have little tour boats in the bottom right-hand corner that shows little chattering teeth to represent the consumers. And then they have others that represent the indigenous Garifuna community. So there are 400 different plant, animal, and insect species that are represented here. But what I love about it is that all of these different things are centering around a place of rebirth, a place of resistance and sustainability. So while they'll have different things that represent, say, the IMF, the World Bank, monoculture, agri-crops, but they also will have things like pedal-powered pirate radio. So one of the sections in the little legend that comes along with this is called Birth, and it reads, Deep inside a womb-like cave formed by the tree roots, a scene of fertility portrays a vampire bat midwife assisting a birth. She is surrounded by medicinal herbs and plants related to fertility and women's reproductive health. Midwifery and other traditional medicinal practices have resiliently survived, despite the biomedical model's attempts to discredit and destroy them. It's my hope that they might turn this into a jigsaw puzzle, because it would be so fun to be actually having the time and the detail to be poring over all of the little elements that they've put together here. But while a jigsaw puzzle is two-dimensional, reality is not. And so the flip side of that reality in the world is the reality of the world. That's the spiritual side. And I think each one of us is one of those jigsaw puzzle pieces that on one side might be a Starbucks barista, and on the other side may be this gentle, generous, amazing person that the world absolutely needs in it. So back to the reality in the world. Let's look at the question, is it possible that we're being manipulated? I always start by defining my terms. So possible, what does that mean? Possible is, do the mechanisms exist in order to exert that kind of control? And is there a lack of mechanisms that would prevent it? Has it happened in the past without any changes that would be significant to prevent it from happening in the present? Who are we? We are both the liberal and conservatives of any consumer culture, and the consumer class of any producer nation. Now let's look at manipulated. Manipulated means to change someone's thoughts or behavior while making them think that it's their own idea. And it's done through the presentation of false facts, the suppression of true facts, or the use of false logic with true facts or false facts. So when I look at the mechanisms of control, I think this poster really illustrates all of them, from weapons to trade to water, land, money, medicine. Let's look at just that one as our piece of the puzzle for today, and whether this has happened in the past. As you know, I've been reading Robert F. Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci. And the part that I came to last night was amazing. It was talking about how in 1910, there was this whole debate over miasma theory versus germ theory. Now, since Russell Brand and I are both word nerds, I'm hoping maybe I got the scoop on him, because I'd never heard the word miasma. And maybe there's a reason that these words, like sovereignty, have been suppressed. So miasma means that health is the result of your immune system and strengthening that through nutrition and then lowering the environmental stresses and poisons. And so that's how you stay healthy. Germ theory is kind of like warfare, where it says you have this invader and you have to evict it. You have to tackle it. And so those two weren't head-to-head in 1910. And germ theory was actually led by Louis Pasteur, who did like pasteurized milk. On his deathbed, Pasteur recanted and said Béchamp was right. The microbe is nothing. The terrain is everything. Now, I find this especially significant because my little unmasked underground are the raw milk people who sell out of my driveway every Wednesday. So there's a connection between those people who have been very much on the forefront of these issues and who also have loved my book. So that kind of thinking all goes together. It also is a puzzle piece that fits with the same era being when, as John Taylor Gatto talks about, We were dumbed down by schooling, that schooling became this mass education that was coercion and that forced us into one particular way of thinking. So these are all pieces that I think we need to put together and say, yes, it is possible. And so the question of, are we being manipulated, is a critical one to be asking. And finally, how have they been able to get away with this? I want to mention only 3 of the rules that I've discerned from the propaganda playbook. One is call things the opposite of what they are. So if you want to dismantle democracy, call it the Patriot Act. 2, it is easier to lie big than it is to lie small, because people's own experience will say, oh, they can't possibly get away with that. 3, the best defense is a good offense. When my daughters were young, I overheard the middle one telling the youngest how to lie. And she said, make sure that you're really indignant. I can't believe that you don't trust me. So if an 8-year-old can figure that out, so can they. That's why we keep hearing, do you trust us? If government, if medicine was transparent, trust wouldn't be an issue. So thank you for listening to the end. And if you enjoyed it, here's another cockamamie scheme of mine. And here's a whole playlist of them. And with apologies to Chris, I would love it if you would subscribe. Thank you.